Ever imagine, like, what it'd be like to shadow a business tycoon for a day?
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're doing just that.
Yeah.
We're going back to 1987, spending a day with, you guessed it, Donald Trump.
1987, Trump. Wow.
And get this, we're using his own words from The Art of the Deal.
So, like, straight from the source.
Exactly. No filters, no interpretations, just Trump in his own words.
That's pretty amazing to get that kind of unfiltered insight.
It is. And, we're not digging into his politics or anything like that.
Right.
This is all about the deal maker,
Okay.
the builder, Trump in his prime.
Gotcha.
And in his book, he describes his day as nonstop action.
Really?
I mean, legal battles, construction projects, even squeezing in calls about, like, Broadway tickets.
Oh, that's a lot.
It's a whirlwind.
Sounds exhausting.
It does.
I mean, you could practically feel that frenetic energy just listening to him describe it.
Right.
But there's also this method to the madness, like a calculated approach to deal making.
You're right, there is.
And he lays it out so clearly in the book. Like the story of the Commodore Hotel.
Ah, the Commodore.
Yeah, he actually convinced the owners to announce publicly that they were closing.
Most people wouldn't see that as a good thing.
Exactly. But Trump, he spun it to his advantage.
Oh, yeah, he was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
Totally. He created this sense of urgency.
Put pressure on the city.
Exactly. It was a power move. Makes you wonder, though, did he genuinely think the hotel was a lost cause?
That is the question. Or was he, like, creating leverage out of thin air?
It's possible. He had this uncanny ability to spot weaknesses and use them,
He did. Kind of like his thing about personally reviewing even tiny expenses.
Oh, yeah. Remember the contractor dispute? Over just a few $1,000s?
I mean, it seems almost contradictory to his, like, lavish image.
It does, right.
It's all about cost control, laser focus.
Totally. He was frugal in some ways, yet had this extravagant public persona.
Absolutely. And then there's his amazing sense of promotion branding.
Oh, for sure. Remember that line from the book?
Oh, you mean contain the costs, promote the hell out of it?
That's the one. Perfect example. The West Side Yards project.
Right.
She purposely called it Television City.
A name that, like, instantly grabs you.
Exactly. And not just the public. Politicians, too.
It wasn't just a catchy name, it was strategic.
Absolutely.
It's almost like all these seemingly random deals,
Mhm.
they all have this underlying strategy.
Well,
He was a master of manipulating perception.
couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of strategic thinking, we got to talk about the Grand Hyatt.
Oh, yeah. The Commodore Hotel turned Grand Hyatt.
That was a huge undertaking, especially with New York City in a financial crisis at the time.
Not to mention the Commodore itself.
Right, it was fading.
Talk about a challenge.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Financing, tax breaks, even pushback on his design choices.
Oh, yeah, he wanted to modernize it.
Yeah, give it a whole new skin, he called it.
But the preservationists, they weren't having it.
Big clash. But Trump, he stood firm.
He had this vision. Bold, new.
Exactly. It's interesting, though, that clash with the preservationists.
Almost symbolic.
Yeah.
Like this desire to break free from the past, create something completely fresh.
It could be interpreted that way, for sure.
Yeah.
He was never one to back down from a fight.
Especially when it came to his vision.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to vision, we can't forget Trump Tower.
Ah, yes. Trump Tower. His statement to the world.
An icon.
Definitely. The epitome of his ambition.
Of always pushing for what he considered the absolute best.
And it all started with buying the Bonwit-Teller building.
Which, of course, came with its own set of hurdles.
Like financing. That was a big one.
Always seemed to be.
He eventually partnered with Equitable, a major financial player.
But even getting them on board, that wasn't easy.
Not at all. He had to convince them of the project's potential.
That it was going to be something truly special.
Exactly. And then there's the story of how he got the air rights for the tower.
I love that story.
It's amazing. Just a handshake deal with Walter Hoving.
Former chairman of Tiffany & Co.
The one and only. It's incredible how their styles were like night and day.
Right. Hoving, he was old school. Trust, gentlemen's agreements.
Yep. And then you have Trump.
Always pushing the limits, using every tactic in the book.
Absolutely. And that really comes through in his dealings with the city over the zoning rules for Trump Tower.
He had this very clear image in his mind. A grand tower dominating the skyline.
A true landmark. But to get it, he needed zoning variances. And he was up against a wall.
So what did he do?
He basically threatened them. He said he'd build this, like, ugly, boxy building.
One that would be, like, totally legal, but awful to look at.
Right. A bold move, almost like he was bluffing.
Did it work?
It did. The city, they caved.
They probably imagined this eyesore ruining the skyline.
Yeah, probably didn't want that. So Trump got his tower, and the city avoided an architectural disaster.
Talk about turning a potential problem into a bargaining chip.
He was a master at that.
It's like he knew exactly how the city would react.
He probably did. And remember his dealings with Don Whitteller about their retail space in the new tower.
Oh, right. He ended up getting them to sign a lease for a much smaller space.
And a very profitable lease for him, I might add.
But it wasn't just about the money, was it?
No, it was strategic, too.
By shrinking Bonwit Teller's footprint, he got even better zoning concessions from the city.
Exactly. Every move he made had a purpose, you know.
It's all connected. And this strategic thinking wasn't limited to, like, real estate.
Oh, no, not at all. Remember the USFL,
Professional football.
the one and only. A big departure from his usual world.
It was. But it shows a lot about, like, his appetite for risk.
Oh, definitely. And his willingness to challenge the status quo.
So he bought the New Jersey Generals.
Yep, a team in a league that was, frankly, struggling to compete with the NFL.
Most people saw risk, but he saw potential, a recurring theme, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he wasn't content with just owning the team. He wanted to shake things up.
He pushed for some major changes, right? Like moving the season to the fall.
Exactly. Head-to-head with the NFL.
Such a bold move, taking on the giant.
A real gamble. And in the end, it didn't pay off.
But it shows he wasn't afraid of a challenge or of disrupting the established order.
Exactly. And then there was the antitrust lawsuit against the NFL.
Oh, right. He claimed the NFL was a monopoly, stifling competition.
A long shot, but he went for it. He spearheaded that whole thing.
So what happened?
Well, it's a mixed bag. The jury actually sided with the USFL.
Whoa, really?
Yep, declared the NFL a monopoly.
That's huge.
It was a legal victory. But the damages they awarded, $1.
$1. What?
Yeah, a symbolic win, basically.
Wow.
And ultimately, it led to the USFL folding. But it's a fascinating part of Trump's story, nonetheless.
It shows he wasn't afraid to take on the big guys, even when the odds were stacked against him.
Definitely. He has never one to back down.
So we're seeing these patterns, bold moves, calculated risks, and a relentless pursuit of his goals.
It's clear he had this incredible drive. But it also makes you wonder, what was it all for?
What was driving him? Was it just about money and power, or is there something deeper?
That's the million-dollar question.
And it's something to keep in mind as we delve deeper into his other ventures.
I can't wait.
Maybe, just maybe, these insights into his deal-making can help us understand his motivations, his ultimate ambitions.
Let's find out.
We've seen Trump, like, take on these massive projects in New York, even a whole football league.
Yeah.
But Atlantic City casinos, that's a whole other level.
Atlantic City in the 80s, it was like this booming gambling scene.
And Trump, of course, he wanted the best spot on the boardwalk.
Crime location.
But getting that land, it was a nightmare.
A total mess. Multiple owners, lawsuits, you name it.
It would have scared off most developers.
For sure.
But not Trump. He saw it as a giant puzzle to solve.
And this is where his attention to detail, it really shines.
Oh, yeah.
He negotiated with each owner separately, made sure every deal was dependent on getting all the pieces.
So smart.
It was high stakes, for sure, but he played it perfectly.
He didn't want to get stuck with half a property.
Exactly. He learned from his past, like the West Side Yards.
Right.
This time, he was in control every step of the way.
No roadblocks.
Exactly. He was thinking long-term, putting all the pieces together for his grand vision.
And it wasn't just about the land, right?
No way. Financing, permits, and then there was the casino license.
Oh, yeah. That was a whole other beast.
Atlantic City regulators, they weren't messing around.
Especially with someone like Trump.
They did their due diligence, that's for sure.
He knew he couldn't slip up. He needed to project this image of, total integrity.
Financial stability. So he brought in the best of the best.
Top lawyers. People with spotless reputations.
To guide him through the process.
And of course, he had his brother, Robert, by his side.
Oh, yeah. Robert was key. He oversaw the day-to-day stuff in Atlantic City.
Trump really valued family in his business.
It's a theme we see over and over.
It is. And it let Trump focus on the big picture.
The overall strategy. And speaking of strategy, sometimes luck plays a role.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that call from Michael Rowe?
Chairman of Holiday Inns.
That's him. Trump thought he was interested in the Barbizon Plaza Hotel in New York.
Right.
Even gave him a whole pitch about it.
But Rose had something else in mind.
He wanted to partner with Trump in Atlantic City.
Wow, what a coincidence.
It was. A lucky break that turned out great for both of them.
Holiday Inns got in on Trump's prime location and his growing reputation.
And Trump, he got the financial backing and the know-how he needed, at
Win-win.
least for a while. And Trump's vision, as always, it was huge.
Oh yeah, he went all out. A luxury experience to rival Las Vegas.
No expense spared. But he also took some big risks, especially with the financing.
What do you mean?
He decided to use junk bonds to fund the construction.
That was a pretty new thing back then, right?
It was, and risky. But he saw it as a way to stay in control.
Didn't want to give up any ownership.
Exactly. And it paid off. The bonds sold, and he opened Trump Plaza without a mountain of debt.
But he wasn't done, was he?
Not even close. He saw a chance to expand his casino empire by buying the Hilton Casino.
The one that was struggling?
That's the one.
Eh.
He offered a whopping $320 million.
People were shocked.
Oh, yeah. And get this, he hadn't even been inside the hotel before making the offer.
He was going on gut feeling.
It seems that way. His assessment of the property's potential.
So different from his father's approach.
Night and day, he was willing to bet big, and he played hardball in the negotiations.
Demanded guarantees, threatened to walk away.
Classic Trump. All part of his strategy to get the best deal possible.
And in the end, he got what he wanted.
He did. He got the Hilton, renamed it Trump's Castle, and he was officially a major player in Atlantic City.
But casinos and skyscrapers weren't enough for him.
Right. He had this knack for seeing value where others didn't.
Like a sixth sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Always looking for the next big score.
The next big deal to climb even higher.
And that drive, that constant search for the next deal, it leads us to a very different project.
Oh, yeah.
An apartment building at 100 Central Park South.
Interesting.
This one shows a different side of Trump.
House.
Well, this one wasn't easy. He ran into a wall of resistance from the tenants.
They were fighting to keep their rent-controlled apartments.
They were not giving up without a fight.
Hmm.
They hired lawyers, filed complaints, and they got the public on their side.
Painting Trump as the bad guy.
The heartless developer. It was a PR nightmare.
But Trump being Trump, he didn't back down.
He never does. He fought back. Refused to settle for anything less than what he considered fair.
It was a long, expensive battle.
It was. And it forced him to change his plans.
Really?
Yeah, he wanted to demolish the building and put up one of his signature towers.
Right.
But the tenants, they stopped him.
He had to play a different game this time.
More finesse, more patience.
And get this, the tenants' resistance actually worked in his favor. All the legal stuff, the delays, it bought him time.
And during that time, New York real estate prices exploded.
So the tenants, they actually helped raise the value of the property they were trying to protect.
It's kind of ironic.
It is. And it shows how Trump could turn things to his advantage.
Even unexpected setbacks. He adapted, changed his plans, and came out on top.
He turned a potential loss into a big win.
It shows his resilience, his ability to think on his feet, and to adjust when he needed to.
We've seen him handle complex land deals, financial problems, even legal and political battles.
He's definitely a master of the game.
Yeah.
Always pushing the limits, always looking for an edge.
But what does it all mean? What's the bigger picture here?
That's the question, isn't it? Is it just about building an empire, about money and power?
Or is there something more driving him, some deeper ambition that we're only just starting to see?
It's something to think about.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've seen so much of Donald Trump's world back in 1987.
A whirlwind of deals, really. Hotels, a football league, zoning battles, tenant disputes.
It seems like he just thrived on all that complexity.
It's definitely what makes this dunk dive so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's more than just, business deals and negotiations.
Right. It's like we're getting a glimpse into the mind of a man who, even back then, seemed to be aiming for something much bigger.
Every deal, every project, it's like he was testing his limits, proving himself.
Makes you wonder, what was he really after? Was it all about wealth and fame? Or was there a deeper ambition driving him?
It's a question that, keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And it becomes even more interesting when you think about what came later. His move into politics, the presidency.
It's amazing to think how these early experiences, all those battles he fought in New York and Atlantic City, shaped his worldview, his approach to leadership.
It's tempting to connect the dots, right? See the seeds of his later persona in these early ventures. The boldness, the risks he took, that willingness to push boundaries, to challenge everything. It was all there.
Yeah, and maybe we can see the roots of his negotiating style, too. His reliance on leverage, that way of framing every interaction as a win-or-lose situation.
That's a good point. And it makes you think about the long-term consequences of that approach. Can you really build strong relationships, real trust, when you're always looking for an advantage?
It's a question worth considering, especially when you think about the impact of his decisions, the ripple effects that go way beyond the business world.
It all comes back to that central question, doesn't it?
Mhm.
What can we learn from this deep dive into Trump's world in '87? We've seen his ambition, his drive, his undeniable talent for deal-making.
But we've also seen the potential downsides, the risks, the ethical questions surrounding his methods.
It's complicated, for sure, full of contradictions. And it leaves us with a lot to ponder, not just about Trump himself, but about ambition in general, the pursuit of success, and the price we sometimes pay to achieve our goals.
So, to our listeners, what do you make of all this? What stands out to you about Trump's journal? What lessons can we take away from his successes and his failures? This isn't just a story about real estate or casinos. It's about the human desire to achieve, to win, and the choices we make along the way. And those choices, as we've seen, they can have a huge impact. That's all for our deep dive into the world of Donald Trump in 1987. Thanks for listening.